children aren't feeling seen and they aren't feeling valued and they aren't feeling loved for who they are in the books and in their educational experience. Why is that so detrimental?
I mean, so I think what's so interesting and so insidious about this is because it's very, very corrosive, but it's
Mhm.
it's a slow burn corrosive environment. And it's almost like I would liken it to like, where you'll find out that a city is living like down the stream from like a toxic waste plant, right? And they're not sick right away, but like it's a slow,
Mm.
right? So like my one of my grandmothers actually grew up down the way from where they were doing some of the nuclear testing, right? Like in the 40s. And she didn't even know until she was pregnant that she had all of these problems. And so it was like a slow burn. And I really think that that's what we're going to see with our students, because we're not, if you're 6 years old, you don't have the language to say, I don't feel
Mm.
seen in the curriculum, or like, I don't feel good about being like Latino because when I go to class, all the stories that I hear in history are about Latino people being in the wrong and white people like saving the day or like being the
Yeah.
positive force. Or for other kids, like I don't feel good because I experience racism. See, this is the thing we have to recognize. Kids, before you draw a breath, you experience racism, because Black babies are 10 times more likely to either die or kill their mothers during their birth, right?
Hmm.
Before you even enter this world, you are experiencing racism. So you live it every day. But when you go to school and you're told that it's not about race, it's a meritocracy, and like this isn't happening and all of that is over now, it's really hard to handle that cognitive dissonance. But they don't have the language to say that. So a 12-year-old is not going to say, wait, this doesn't make sense, because if racism isn't real, then how come like all of my undocumented family members are being abused at their jobs
Hmm.
because they have no rights because they're undocumented? But racism and all of this stuff isn't real. But all of my white friends, their families, maybe their grandparents came here a couple more generations back, but now they're American and they're, living their best lives. A 12-year-old is
Hmm.
not going to do that. But what a 12-year-old is going to do is show that they're unwell in a
Yeah.
myriad of ways. Show that they're unwell in their behavior, in their disposition, in their lack of attention, in their trauma, all of that. So it's really hard, because then you also have teachers that are now responding to the impact of all of this, but on top of that, they don't even know how to respond, because
Hmm.
we have a classroom community crisis in our country, because so much of the trauma, like everyone's talking about trauma informed kids happening at home, so much of the trauma is happening at school.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about it as, how do we, handle the trauma that's going on at home? We're not realizing that our buildings are traumatizing our students, and our kids are experiencing racism. And think about, we're going to have a bunch of LGBT students, right, with behavior issues in a state like Florida, because they wake up every day knowing that they are actively being persecuted. What do
Yeah,
you think?
exactly.
Psyche. I mean, there's no way that that's not impacting you. And so I think like what that does is it slowly erodes at the self. It breaks down our kids in so many ways, and it creates these very, very deep long-term wounds that are going to show up as a lot of different things. And I think that's why it's not as easy to point a cause and correlation, because it's not all one way. Some kids act out, some kids don't, some kids have low grade depression, some kids have anxiety. We have the number of students reporting anxiety or depression went up 5-fold in the last 3 years. I
Hmm.
mean, where do you think that's coming from? They all watched this all unfold. Kids watch the news, and they're on TikTok. And TikTok is
That is
crazy.
my thing. That is my,
And TikTok is wild. So they're seeing all of this play out in real time, and it gets to you, right? It does something to you. There's a study. I'm forgetting the person's name, but it's such a cool study. And it's about how the telomeres, which are like the parts of your cell, right, of Black children are actually, they shrink in size when they're exposed repeatedly to racism at school. So it actually impacts the way that you age. I don't know if you folks listening also know this. It's well studied. You can look it up. On average, a Black woman's cells are 7 years older than a white woman's cells. It's because it's not, and it's not because we're just magically older. It's because of the exposure. So all that to say, how does it impact kids? Whether you name it or not, whether you address it or not, whether you teach about it or not, our kids experience all of the isms. Islamophobia, big one right now. Racism, anti-LGBT, all the isms, classism, for goodness sake. They experience it in their daily life. So when they don't have a mechanism for processing what's happening, when they don't have language, and then when they don't feel any agency or efficacy about pushing back against that, it deteriorates their self and their mental state, and it creates this long-term problem that, like I said, that manifests in what I think is going to be a continuing mental health crisis for our students. And then our teachers are the ones who are on the front lines of that. So that's the thing. Like, it's hurting teachers double because they're being censored, right? And they're kind of scared, like teachers across the United States scared. But then also, when the kids' mental health goes down, guess who is the first person that
exactly. It's this vicious cycle. Yeah, it really is.
So it's a very serious concern that everybody, even if you don't have kids, if you live in this society, interact with people, it's something that you need to be tapped into for sure.
Yeah, I just feel as though in so many ways, and education being probably one of the most, if not the most important, we are in a time where we're really confronted with some scary stuff in regards to humanity. Like, and this is something, I talked to my therapist about. I'm like, I am a mother, but not only am I a mother, I just have this deep love for humanity, as I would hope most people do, in seeing each other and seeing love and seeing pain and seeing joy and seeing all of the sides of things. And I just think that right now, if we don't make some big changes, what happens in the future, right? Like what is my daughter going to be doing if she's sitting down talking to someone 30 years from now, when she's in her mid to late 30s? What is the world then? What comes of it?
And what stories will we tell? I don't even know. The way that schools are trying to rewrite history, I don't even know what will become of like social studies. I mean, honestly, like, I don't even know what that will be, because just total frame of references is shifting. And it's happening so surreptitiously. And I was talking about this actually on my page recently, because when you actually get down to it, it's not that many people that are actively pushing this. Like, in a lot of these small little counties, it's like one or two people that are like really, really passionate. And they're like, we got to get these books out. And they come to every meeting and they have all of this just fire. And it's so interesting because on one side, one or two people is enough to like make these changes that impact the rest of the country. But definitely one or two of us that don't want it to go down like that. So it's just about being organized and being intentional and building this movement and recognizing this moment, because on the other side, they don't care if it's one person. That one person's going to yell for 1,000 people and get stuff. I mean, look at how quickly Florida has deteriorated. I mean, it was like an eye. So so what I hope people listening think about is, there is hope, but it's just about people have to be persistent. Like, this is how change happens. You have to like actively engage. You got to tap into it, because the other side is definitely they're plotting right now as we speak.
Exactly. They are together. They are finding like that one thing, and they are pushing towards it. And if we want, collective humanity and love and empathy and inclusion and all of these things, then we need to just tap into one framework of messaging and just continue to go for it. And I was just talking to a friend about this. I often explain that this happened so fast in Florida because now I'm right outside of DC in what is considered, one of the more progressive areas in the country. And there are a couple of like rumblings about LGBTQ books and stuff like that. And I showed up at like a rally for inclusive schools, and I was a little disheartened to see like that there weren't, even though I know the
Yeah.
vast majority of people support it here, they're like, oh, maybe I don't have to show up because we're safe here,
No, you're not.
No.
I am so
Yeah.
sorry to tell you, you are not. You have to be so active. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel about California, right? Like,
Yeah.
I never want to take for granted that this is, I'm never going to fall asleep because it's still California is this beacon of, like liberal, whatever, but you never know. People are actively moving. I mean, somebody is probably trying to ban Rooted in Joy right now.
Yes.
My book is on a list somewhere that
I'm
somebody's
sure it is.
gotta get this out of school. So I think it's important for people to, and that's part of the reason why I intentionally named the book Rooted in Joy, though, because all of that, like, I go to a rally for inclusive books and turn it into a party. I mean, get the barbecue, get the music.
Yes.
Let's be joyful and let's resist with joy. Like, let's be unapologetically for this. Like I always say, I'm unapologetically Black wherever I go, and I'm gonna have a good time. I am not going to let anybody turn this into, because my ancestors did not go through what they went through for me to continue to sit here and struggle. I'm going to fight for liberation, but I'm going to do it on my terms and joyfully. And so, it doesn't have to be, all bad. Like, make it fun, make it a club, like, hey, everybody, let's get together and go to the parent teacher meetings and then go get the $1 margaritas at Applebee's. Like, I'm gonna, like, make it, you know what I'm saying? Like, find ways to make it joyful.
Absolutely. Having said that, because I think you've touched on so many things throughout this podcast, Deonna, that really expresses what kindness means to you. But I'd love to hear, if you had to give a definition, what would it be?
Yeah, I think kindness has to be like radical. Kindness, like radical understanding that, like, you in the fullest expression of yourself deserves to be here, whatever that looks like wherever we are, you as you deserve to be here. And so I think, like, kindness has to move past politeness.
Yes.
Past like being cordial, like, I have my family Southern, so I understand the idea of like being kind and cordial and all. That's not really the kindness that we need in this moment. I mean, it would be great to see, more of that, because I think, I miss the days where you walk down the street and everybody says hello, good morning. But kindness is this radical, radically making space for others. And so I think for a lot of folks, it can feel good to do that. And I think that's why people kind of pick the lower hanging fruit of like, I'm kind because, I smiled today, and that's important too, and keep doing that. But it also feels good to make space for others. It feels good to deeply believe that, like, you as a person, just for being you, for no other reason, no other qualifier, have value. Like, that also feels good. So I think we need to kind of like rebrand and understand that, like, advocacy work and liberation and joy and all of that, it feels just as good as, buying a sticker that says choose kindness and putting it on your water bottle. Like, it feels just as good as doing that. So I think I encourage people to allow that to be deeper. And I think when you start to dive into this humanizing work, what you realize is that in a lot of ways, schools not only rob our students of their humanity, but it impacts the teacher. So they're alienating you from your own self as well. I mean, the way that teachers are supposed to operate, it's hard to be joyful and kind. And so the more you realize, when you're like pushing back and you're like making space for others, you're healing yourself as well, because we cannot be well in this environment. I mean, nobody, if you it's October 12th when we're recording this, right? If you open any news app today, you are not going to be well. I promise you that. You are not scroll for 2 seconds, you are not going to be well. So when you recognize that, like, what kindness can look like, not so you're doing it for others, but also for yourself. You're pushing for this for your own well-being as well as the well-being of others.
All of that.
All of that. Yeah. I feel like I'm giving you like 30-minute answers to all of these very concise questions.
No, because and that's why I started this, right? Because we've said for years now that kindness is not niceness, that kindness needs to be rooted in justice and grounded in action and open to change, right? Once you hear things, once you gain information, as you said, opening up the news right now, I have not been well. None of us have been well, right, this week. And as you gain more knowledge, things may change, things may shift, and I want everyone to always be aware of that. Like, we have to set aside our own egos and embrace some humility in our own humanity if we want to save humanity.
Right. And that's so important. Your ego and like knowing that things can change. I talk about this in the book. I talk about, there's nothing that I'm telling you not to do that I probably haven't done. Like, I'm not saying this from a position of I was always a perfect teacher, because let me tell you, my students follow me on social media and they will tell you themselves. They will sometimes like comment on my stuff of like, oh yeah, I remember when Miss Smith did this and that kind of thing, because they're all older now. But I have made mistakes, but it's about knowing that you can change. Like, I had a choice. I was doing things that harmed my students of color. I was in practices that were harmful.
Same.
And I could either bear down and be like, no, this is the way that I was taught, and I don't have the capacity to learn, and da 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 da. Like, I could bear down and like keep doing that, and that's a choice. Or I could be like, oh, I need to learn something new. And if your understanding of kindness was surface level, when you hear these things, it doesn't have to be you're a bad person, you're bad, or like bear down. Well, I don't want to get political, or be open to learning something else, maybe changing, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to learn something new. And in the book, I talk about when you know better, you do better. And you probably did what you knew at the time, and that's fine. And now you know better, so you need to do better. It doesn't have to be like super dramatic.
Yes. I mean, that's the part that I think a lot of people need to hear, that it doesn't need to be super dramatic, and that the change is okay. No matter what that brings about, it is okay, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We teach our students, or at least I used to all the time, like verbally out loud, right? Modeling mistakes are when my brain grows. But then when we are adults and we make these mistakes, we need to afford ourselves that same compassion and say, listen, I messed up, and this is what I'm going to do moving forward. For sure.
And especially in this work, because I am not shy about talking about race. And I know a lot of people grew up in race averse environments where like anytime I say like even Black, white, or Latino, like inside they're like, ooh, a little scared. Because I'm not shy about saying that, I think people can think that means that they have to be ashamed. Like, I'm not saying that you need to be ashamed about these things, because shame doesn't do anything. If you listen to Brene Brown, shame just it stops and shuts down this work. So it's not about shame. You can say like, oh, I'm a white teacher and I haven't been honoring my kids' culture, or I don't even know what that looks like, and I want to learn, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad, terrible person. And I think that's why some of this backlash was so strong, because what people heard in 2020 was like, oh, you're a white teacher, so you're bad. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. It's just, you need to recognize you're a white teacher, and that means something. It doesn't mean bad, but it does have implications, and you need to know what those are. And so I think when you're thinking about like how to be kind and choose joy and all of these things that fit into it, recognize that like it needs to be something a little bit deeper, because however you're operating in the world has implications for everybody, for your students especially, or your clients, or whoever you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people who are listening to this support you, support your book, support your work? Where can I follow you? Tell me all the things.
So I would love for you to join my little squad of teachers on Instagram. It's really simple. It's just my name, Deonna Smith. And I do a lot of work there, and I love interacting with folks. And I'm kind of like in a love-hate relationship with Instagram, like everybody is, because it is, a lot in social media, but that is still the best place to get a hold of me. I would love for you to look into Rooted in Joy. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and also bookstore. And so check it out if you like it. And if you are interested in learning more about like working with me or your school or just what I do in my work, my website is very straightforward. It's just Deonna Smith Consulting. So try to make it easy for folks to find me. But I would absolutely love to, hear more about what you're experiencing if you just like to chat. And I love coming on, podcasts, because I feel like there's so many teachers out there who are doing such amazing work, and we need to be more connected to each other because it can feel isolating. So I just want to like build this community and be like, y'all, like get together where this is our team, this is our community. Like someone here is rooting for you. Like I'm on your team, I'm rooting for you. So would love for you to join the community that way. And I'm some cool things hopefully coming next year, like potentially like a little membership club. So hopefully more things coming down the pipeline there as well.
That's amazing. Deonna, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for doing all the work that you do and just being who you are.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so awesome to get to chat with people, and just I really appreciate you for seeing the vision of the book and being it means a lot. And I love the work that you're doing, because I know that a lot of teachers, you really help teachers feel seen and recognized with your organization as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I am so happy that we were able to have this 2-part segment with Deonna. As we sat down and started chatting, we just realized that there were so many things that were aligned between the work that she does and the work that we do. And we wanted to make sure that we included every last bit of it. So I hope after you hear this, I always kind of give you something to move into this week with. And I hope that you can continue to reframe what kindness means to you. I hope that you can go through this work feeling joy. And I hope that you can remember that there are other people out there doing the same. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Kindness Is podcast. If you love it and it's adding even a little bit of value to your life, we would love, love, love if you could subscribe, rate, and review so we can reach even more people and make this world a little bit more kind.